It started with that one night. Lisa didn't come home, and as the hours passed, I was left sitting there like an idiot, just scrolling through my phone over and over again. The clock seemed to mock me, moving painfully slow. Midnight came and went, then 1 a.m., and still no sign of her. By 2 a.m., the house was eerily quiet, with nothing but the occasional buzz from my phone reminding me I was still waiting. There were no texts from Lisa, no missed calls, just silence. I tried to tell myself it was no big deal. After all, she had mentioned going to a party earlier. I just need to blow off some steam, she'd said, all casual like it was no big deal. Fine, whatever, I thought. But as the night dragged on, that excuse started to feel thinner and thinner. By 3 a.m., I couldn't lie to myself anymore. Something was wrong. You know that feeling when your gut is screaming at you, but you don't want to listen because you're afraid of what it'll confirm? Yeah, that was me. I kept telling myself she was probably with her friends, maybe she'd had too much to drink, and they were just looking after her. That's what friends do, right? But even as I repeated that lie in my head, I knew it wasn't true. Deep down, I knew. I tried calling her. Straight to voicemail. That was the first real stab of fear, the kind that hits you right in the chest and doesn't let up. At 3:45 a.m., I texted her, "Lisa, where are you?" The message sat there, unread, staring back at me like a taunt. As the minutes dragged on, every second felt heavier, like it was crushing me bit by bit. My mind started playing tricks on me, flashes of her laughing with someone else, images I didn't want to believe but couldn't stop from creeping in. I knew better than to jump to conclusions, but the way she'd been acting lately, distant, cold, it was hard not to wonder. When the first rays of the morning sun slipped through the blinds, something in me snapped. I wasn't just worried anymore, I was angry. How could she just stay out all night without a single word, like I didn't even matter? I kept thinking about how she had left earlier, wearing that little black dress, throwing out some half-hearted excuse about needing a break. She said she was tired of putting up with my issues. My issues? That stung more than anything, because I knew exactly what she was talking about. It wasn't the first time she'd thrown that in my face, one bad night in bed, and suddenly I was the problem. She never let it go, always throwing out little digs when she could, acting like that one night defined everything. By the time 9 a.m. rolled around, I was done waiting like some clueless fool. I grabbed my keys and left. Something in me told me I wasn't going to like what I found, but I needed to know. By mid-morning, I couldn't take the waiting anymore. I had spent hours torturing myself, thinking about where she could be, what she was doing, and with whom. There was no way I was going to sit there all day feeling like an idiot. I grabbed my phone, opened up the location-sharing app we'd set up a while back, mostly for convenience, or so I thought. I remember thinking how dumb she was for not turning it off, but I guess when you get too comfortable lying, you slip up eventually. Her location popped up on the screen, but it wasn't anywhere near her friends' usual hangouts. No, she wasn't still out partying. She wasn't at some friend's house either, where they'd all crashed after a long night of drinking. No, she was in a completely different part of town. A random apartment complex on the opposite side of the city, somewhere she had no business being. I just stared at the screen for a moment, the little blinking dot marking where she was, mocking me. That sick, heavy feeling in my stomach twisted tighter. This wasn't a misunderstanding, and I knew it. I felt my hands start to shake, but I couldn't stop myself. I grabbed my keys and walked out the door, my mind in overdrive. There was no plan, no clear thought beyond the raw need to confront her, to get answers. I didn't care how ugly it was about to get, I just had to know. The drive over was a blur. Every mile felt like it dragged on forever, my heart pounding in my chest. I didn't even know what I was going to say when I got there, but I knew I couldn't turn back. Anger was pushing me forward, autopilot kicking in. By the time I pulled up outside the complex, my pulse was hammering so hard I could hear it in my ears. There were 1,000 things running through my mind, each one more painful than the last. I parked across the street, hoping for a glimpse of her, though part of me was praying I wouldn't see what I feared. But sure enough, around 12:30, she walked out. And she wasn't alone. Lisa was wearing the same little black dress from the night before. Her hair was messy, makeup smudged, she looked like someone who had just rolled out of bed. But it wasn't just her disheveled appearance that hit me like a punch to the gut. It was the way she walked, the way she looked. She looked satisfied. And right behind her was some guy. A tall, clean-cut guy who looked like he had just won the damn lottery. He was zipping up his jacket, smirking like he owned the world, like he'd just walked away with something that wasn't his. I felt frozen. My body was screaming at me to do something, to jump out of the car and storm over there, but I couldn't move. I just watched, gripping the steering wheel so tight my knuckles turned white. Lisa smiled up at him, that smile, the one she used to save for me. And then, right there in broad daylight, he leaned down and kissed her. It wasn't some quick peck on the cheek either. No, this was something deeper, something that cut me to the core. Everything in me wanted to explode, to march over and rip that guy apart, to scream at Lisa until she couldn't deny it anymore. But I didn't. I sat there, rooted in place, watching her get into his car without a second thought. They drove off, and just like that, she was gone. No more pretending, no more excuses. The truth was right in front of me, as ugly and undeniable as I feared it would be. I went home in a daze. My mind was spinning, jumping from one thought to the next, anger, humiliation, disbelief. How long had this been going on? Did she really think I wouldn't notice? Or did she just not care enough to hide it anymore? When I got back, I didn't call her. I didn't text her. I ghosted her the way she had ghosted me. Let her wonder where I was for a change. By the time evening rolled around, my phone finally buzzed. It was Lisa. The messages started flooding in, one after another. Where are you? Are you okay? Followed by, babe, I'm sorry. I should have come home last night. Please, just talk to me. I stared at the screen, each message adding to the pit growing in my stomach. It wasn't regret or remorse I was feeling, though. It was anger, boiling just beneath the surface. Anger at how she was playing the victim, acting like she was the one lost in all this, like I was the one who needed to answer to her. I didn't respond. What was there to say? She'd already shown me what kind of person she really was, and I wasn't in the mood to hear her excuses. By the next morning, though, the silence must have gotten to her. Around 9 a.m., I heard the pounding at the front door. I didn't have to look to know who it was. I could hear her voice, shaky and desperate, calling out my name. Ryan. Please, just open the door. Let me explain. Explain. Explain what, exactly? I thought about leaving her out there, letting her beg for a while, but I was done hiding. I opened the door just a crack, enough to see her standing there. She looked a mess. Mascara smeared down her cheeks, her hair tangled, and she was still wearing the same black dress she'd been in the night before. Seeing her like that, all pathetic and disheveled, didn't make me feel sorry for her. It made me furious. Explain what? I said, my voice colder than I'd ever heard it. I stepped aside to let her in, but I kept my distance, folding my arms and leaning against the wall. Lisa flinched at my tone, but she walked in, wiping at her eyes like some nervous schoolgirl. She stood in the living room, wringing her hands, but I wasn't buying her act. Not after what I saw. Not after that kiss. Ryan, it's not what you think, she started, her voice trembling. I almost laughed at how cliché it sounded. Not what I think. That was rich. I shut the door behind her and crossed my arms, waiting. I wanted to hear whatever excuse she thought would fix this. Not what I think, I repeated, my voice low and simmering. So, you didn't spend the night with some random guy, Lisa? Because I'm pretty sure I watched you leave his apartment this morning. I'm pretty sure I saw him kiss you right before you got in his car. Her face went pale. She opened her mouth to say something, but nothing came out at first. Her eyes widened like she hadn't expected me to know. Of course, she didn't. She thought she could just waltz in here and spin some story, and I'd be dumb enough to fall for it. Ryan, she said, stepping closer, I was drunk, okay? I wasn't thinking straight. It just happened. I didn't mean for it to go this far. Drunk. That was her excuse. I scoffed, shaking my head. You didn't mean for it to go this far. I shot back, my voice rising. Which part didn't you mean, Lisa? The part where you lied to me and said you were with friends, or the part where you slept with someone else? I didn't sleep with him, she blurted out, way too fast to be believable. The lie came out so quickly, it was almost impressive how naturally it rolled off her tongue. I laughed, short and bitter. Really? Because I don't believe you. Not one word of it. She started pacing then, running her fingers through her hair like she was desperately searching for the right angle, the perfect twist that might sell me on this mess. It was a mistake, she muttered, her voice cracking. I was just so frustrated with everything, with you, with us. You don't even see how hard this has been for me. There it was. The pivot. Turning it back on me, making it about her. Suddenly, she was the one suffering. I could feel my pulse pounding in my temples as I stared at her, trying to process how she had the nerve to make this about herself. So, this is my fault? I asked, my voice shaking with restrained fury. Because I couldn't fix things between us fast enough? Because I had some issues in bed, Lisa? She stopped pacing for a moment, and for a split second, I thought she might actually admit it. But then she sighed, playing the victim like she always did, perfecting her role. You don't understand, she whispered. I've been trying, Ryan. I've been trying to hold it together, but you've been so distant. It's not just about that, it's everything. You've been pushing me away for months. Pushing her away. I could barely believe what I was hearing. I was the one who had spent countless nights trying to talk to her, trying to figure out what was wrong. She was the one who brushed me off, told me I was too sensitive, that I was overthinking things. And now she was standing there, turning it around on me, like I was the one who had driven her into the arms of some other guy. You've got to be kidding me, I said through clenched teeth, struggling to keep control. You think I'm distant? You've been sneaking around, lying to my face, and now you're going to stand there and tell me this is because of something I did? She didn't answer right away. She just stood there, shaking, looking like she was about to crumble. And for a moment, I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. But then I remembered that kiss, the way she smiled at him, like I never existed. It was the silence that finally broke me. Lisa just stood there, shaking like she was about to fall apart, but I wasn't buying it. I'd seen the real her, the one who could sneak around and lie without blinking, the one who could smile at another man like I was invisible. The one who only cared when she got caught. I took a breath, steadying myself. How long, Lisa? I asked, my voice quiet but firm. The question slipped out before I could stop it, and in that moment, I needed to know. How long has this been going on? Her face went even paler, like all the blood had drained from it. She looked down at the floor, hands trembling as she fidgeted with her dress. She didn't deny it. And that silence, that awful silence, was all the answer I needed. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely audible. Ryan, it started a few months ago, she whispered, eyes still glued to the ground. A few months ago. Months. I felt my stomach drop. Months of her coming home, acting like everything was normal. Months of her lying to my face, pretending like we still had a shot while she was off with someone else. My hands balled into fists, but I forced myself to stay calm. Losing it now wouldn't change anything, and I needed to be clear-headed for this. "Get out," I said, my voice cold and controlled. I didn't yell, didn't explode like I thought I might. I just wanted her gone. "Ryan, please," she started, stepping toward me, tears welling up again. I was confused, okay? I was frustrated with everything going on between us. I didn't know how to handle it. "But I love you. We can fix this." Her voice was shaky, desperate, but I wasn't having it. I looked her dead in the eyes. I said, "Get out." This time, my voice was harder, more final. I pointed to the door, every word laced with the anger and betrayal I'd been holding back. "Go be with him if that's what you want. But don't stand here and act like this is my fault. We're done, Lisa." For a moment, I thought she might fight back, that she would try to worm her way out of it like she always did. But something in my tone must have told her I was serious this time. Her face crumpled, and for a brief second, I could see the defeat in her eyes. She nodded slowly, wiping the tears from her cheeks as she grabbed her purse. Her shoulders slumped in a way I'd never seen before, like she knew she'd lost. Without another word, she walked out the door, the click of it closing behind her echoing through the silence of the house. And just like that, she was gone. I stood there, staring at the door for what felt like an eternity. The house was quiet now, too quiet, and for the first time in months, I didn't feel that gnawing anxiety waiting for her to come back through the door. It was over. Or at least, it felt like it. I sank down onto the couch, staring at the spot where she had been standing just moments ago. Everything had come crashing down so fast, faster than I could have imagined. One night, just one night, and everything unraveled. I told myself I didn't care that she was gone, that I was better off without her. I didn't need to hear any more of her lies, no more excuses, no more guilt trips about how I was the one who messed everything up. But as much as I wanted to believe I'd cut her out, just like she had cut me out emotionally, I knew better. Ghosting someone might feel satisfying in the moment, but once the anger fades, it leaves a hollow space. That's exactly how I felt, empty. The adrenaline that had been keeping me upright had vanished, leaving me drained and exhausted. I grabbed my phone, half out of habit, half because I didn't know what else to do. I saw the string of messages she'd sent earlier, all still unread. "Ryan, we need to talk. Please, just answer me. I know I screwed up, but we can work through this. I miss you. Where are you?" Each message made my stomach twist in knots. They were all so fake. She didn't miss me. She missed the control, the safety of knowing she had me wrapped around her finger while she lived a double life. The more I scrolled through the texts, the angrier I got. But underneath that anger, something else was lurking, something I wasn't ready to admit yet. Sadness. The kind that creeps in once the rage burns out. The kind that reminds you the person you love just tossed everything away like it meant nothing. By the next evening, I still hadn't responded to Lisa. I wasn't planning to, either. Ignoring her felt like the only power I had left, and for once, I wanted her to feel the same uncertainty she'd made me live with for months. But life has a funny way of not letting you stay in control for too long. Around 7 p.m., my phone buzzed again. This time, it wasn't a text. It was a call. And it was from her. I stared at the screen, her name glowing in the dim light of the living room. My first instinct was to ignore it. What could she possibly say that I hadn't already heard? But something, maybe curiosity, maybe a twisted need for closure, made me answer. I kept my voice cold, distant. "What do you want?" On the other end, her voice was a mess, frantic, broken. "Ryan, please. I just need to see you. We need to talk face to face, just once. I'm begging you." I stayed silent, letting her sobs fill the air. A part of me wanted to hang up right then and there, but there was another part of me, the part that still stupidly cared, that couldn't bring itself to do it. Even after everything she'd done, even after the betrayal, I still felt something for her. And that was the worst part. "There's nothing to talk about, Lisa," I finally said, keeping my voice flat. "You made your choice. Now live with it." I know," she cried, her words barely coherent through her tears. "But I'll leave him, Ryan. I'll cut him off. He meant nothing, I swear. It's you. It's always been you." I froze. Did she really think I'd fall for this? After months of sneaking around, after all her lies, now she was ready to drop the guy like it was nothing. Now she wanted to fix things. I clenched my jaw, trying to hold back the wave of frustration and disbelief. "You should have thought about that before you slept with him," I shot back, harsher than I intended. "It wasn't like that," she screamed into the phone, her voice cracking. I was angry, I felt trapped. "You don't understand how hard it's been for me. I've been so lonely, so frustrated." And there it was again. The same old story. It wasn't her fault. It never was. Always me. Always someone else to blame. Lisa was the victim in her world, and I was just the villain who couldn't make her happy. I could feel the heat rising in my chest, my anger threatening to spill over. "I don't care how hard it's been for you, Lisa," I snapped, pacing the living room now, my hand tight around the phone. "You didn't care how hard it's been for me. I was here, trying to make this work, but you checked out. You found someone else instead. That's not fair," she cried, her voice shaking again. "I didn't plan for this to happen. It wasn't supposed to go this far. I was just confused." I cut her off, my voice filled with bitter sarcasm. "He was just there, right? Is that supposed to make it better?" There was silence on the other end, but I could still hear her breathing, shallow and erratic. When she spoke again, her voice was soft, almost pleading. "Ryan. I love you. I made a mistake, but I love you. Don't throw this away because of one night." One night? I almost laughed at how pathetic that sounded. This wasn't about one night. This was about months of lies, months of betrayal. This was about the fact that she'd looked me in the eyes every day and pretended everything was fine while she was off with him. How could she even say the words, "I love you," with a straight face? "You don't love me," I said quietly, but firmly. "You love the idea of me. You love the safety, the comfort. But if you really loved me, you wouldn't have done this. You wouldn't have looked at me like I didn't exist while you were off with him." "Ryan, please," she whispered, her voice barely holding together, but I couldn't listen anymore. I'd heard enough. "We're done," I said, my voice final. "Stop calling me. Stop texting me. Just stop." Before she could respond, I hung up. I threw the phone on the couch, my hands shaking, heart pounding in my chest. The relief I thought I'd feel when I ghosted her wasn't there anymore. All I felt was the weight of reality crashing down on me. Yes, I was free. But that freedom didn't feel as good as I imagined. Instead, it felt hollow, like something had been ripped out of me and replaced with this unbearable emptiness. I stood there in the middle of the living room, the silence ringing in my ears. This was the part no one talks about. The part where, even after you've made the right decision, you're still left standing in the wreckage, wondering if it could have been different. The next few days passed in a strange, hollow blur. I thought cutting Lisa off completely would bring me some peace, that finally making the decision to end things would lift the weight off my shoulders. But instead, it felt like I was stuck in a fog. I was free, sure, but the emptiness that came with it was heavier than I expected. I didn't hear from her again after that last phone call. No more desperate texts, no calls, nothing. She had gone silent, and part of me was relieved. But the other part, the part that still felt like I'd been sucker punched, wasn't sure what to make of it. The house felt too quiet now, too empty. Every little thing reminded me of her, of the life we were supposed to have built together. The couch we picked out, the pictures on the wall, even the damn coffee cups in the kitchen. It was like I couldn't escape her, even though she was gone. I tried to focus on the little things, cleaning up, doing laundry, anything to distract myself from the mess in my head. But every time I folded a shirt or scrubbed a dish, my mind drifted back to her. To the fights, the lies, and that morning when I saw her walking out of his apartment. And then to that phone call, where she begged me to believe her one last time. I couldn't stop replaying it all, over and over, like I was stuck in some kind of loop. The worst part wasn't that she was gone. It was realizing that she had never really been there in the first place. All this time, she'd been living a lie, pretending to be someone she wasn't, and I had fallen for it. I had trusted her. Given her everything. And she had thrown it all away without a second thought. By the third day, I couldn't stand being in the house anymore. It felt like the walls were closing in on me, suffocating me with all the memories. I grabbed my keys and decided to just drive. No destination in mind, just a need to clear my head and get away from everything that reminded me of her. The streets were busy, but inside my car, it was just me and my thoughts. I found myself driving to a park nearby, pulling into the lot without even thinking about it. I sat there for a while, just watching people go about their lives. Couples holding hands, kids running around, people walking their dogs, all the normal, everyday things that now felt like they belonged to someone else's life. I wasn't sad about losing her, that much I knew. I was sad about losing the life I thought we were building. The future I thought we had together. The plans we made, the trips we talked about, the holidays we wanted to spend together. It was all gone now, replaced with the harsh reality that I had been living a lie for months. But as I sat there, watching the world move on without me, something else started to sink in. This wasn't the end. It felt like it, sure. But life was still moving forward, even if I wasn't ready for it yet. I was still here, breathing, thinking, hurting, but I was also free. Free from her lies, free from the manipulation. And that was something. After a while, I started driving again, letting the road take me wherever it wanted. I ended up pulling into the parking lot of a lawyer's office. I hadn't planned on it, but I knew it was the right step. Inside, I was greeted by a middle-aged woman who didn't ask too many questions. She'd probably seen 1,000 cases like mine. She went over the details quickly, like it was just another day at work. Divorce. That word hit hard, but it also felt like closure. Like the end of something toxic. When I left the office, the sun was starting to set, casting long shadows across the parking lot. I stood there for a moment, taking it all in. This was real. I was officially moving on, and there was no turning back. On the drive home, something shifted in me. The sadness was still there, of course. It would be for a while, I knew that. But it wasn't as heavy anymore. There was room now for something else, hope, maybe. Or at least the possibility of it. When I got back to the house, I stepped inside, and for the first time in weeks, it didn't feel like the walls were closing in on me. The house felt different. Empty, yes, but in a way that was full of potential. It was mine now. I didn't have to share it with her lies anymore. I didn't have to carry the weight of her betrayal. This was my space. I sat down on the couch, feeling the weight of the day lift off my shoulders. It wasn't going to be easy, none of this was, but for the first time, I knew I was going to be okay. Lisa could go live her life, play her games with someone else. I was done with her. Done with the lies. Done letting her control my life. And for the first time in what felt like forever, I didn't need her anymore. That realization, that feeling, that was the beginning of something new. A week passed, and for the first time in what felt like forever, things were calm. The divorce papers were officially filed, and though the process had only just begun, it felt like a huge weight had lifted. Lisa hadn't reached out again, not a text, not a call, nothing. And as much as I tried not to think about it, I knew better. People like her didn't just fade quietly into the background. They regrouped, recalculated, and struck when you least expected it. And sure enough, she did. It was a Tuesday morning when I got an email from her, no subject line, just her name. For a moment, I thought about deleting it without even opening it, but curiosity got the better of me. What I saw made my stomach churn. You think you're walking away clean, but you're not. Don't forget what I know about you. If you think this divorce is going to be easy, think again. My heart sank. It wasn't just a threat, it was a reminder that Lisa wasn't going to let go without a fight. She always had to have the last word, the last laugh. I threw my phone down, pacing the room, trying to calm the anger boiling up inside me. What did she think she had on me? What was she planning to do? My mind raced, trying to find any dirty secret she could twist into her favor. And then I remembered, years ago, I had lent money to a friend without telling her. It wasn't because I was hiding anything, but because I knew how she was about money, always obsessed with control. She must have found out somehow, and now she was going to use it against me, twist it into some narrative about me being secretive and dishonest. I was furious, but more than that, I was done playing her games. I grabbed my phone, and before I could second-guess myself, I blocked her number. I didn't need to hear her lies anymore. She had already done enough damage. The next morning, I met with my lawyer again, laying everything out on the table, the email, the threats, the money. He stayed calm, like this was just another day for him. She's bluffing, he said, leaning back in his chair. We'll handle this. That loan isn't even marital property. She can't use it against you. You've got nothing to worry about. His confidence settled me a little. I'd let Lisa manipulate me for so long that I'd forgotten what it felt like to be in control. This time, she wasn't going to win. I was ready. For the next few weeks, things stayed quiet. Too quiet, honestly. I expected Lisa to throw more punches, to try to drag out the divorce, but she didn't. No cryptic emails, no petty threats. Just silence. Maybe she had finally accepted that it was over, that I wasn't falling for her games anymore. Then, one evening, I came home and found an envelope slipped under my front door. It wasn't from the court, no, this was personal. I opened it and found a single note inside, along with a few printed photos. They were of me and Mark, my best friend, having drinks at a bar. One of us laughing, the other deep in conversation. And there, scribbled on the back of the photos, was Lisa's message, drinking your troubles away while we're still married? This won't look good in court. Keep playing, Ryan. I'm ready for it. I laughed out loud. A bitter, hollow laugh. This was her final move. Trying to make me look bad for having drinks with a friend. It was so desperate, so petty. But more than anything, it was sad. She was flailing, grasping at anything to hold on to. She was losing her grip, and she knew it. That night, I didn't respond. I didn't call her. I didn't even let myself get angry. I was done. If she wanted to keep sending threats, let her. She could play her games with someone else. I was moving forward, and I wasn't looking back. The final court date came quicker than I expected. Lisa sat across from me, cold and calculating, but there was something different in her eyes. Desperation. She knew she'd lost. My lawyer had shut down every accusation she tried to make, and the judge saw right through her tactics. The divorce was finalized, clean and swift, just like my lawyer had promised. When I left the courthouse, I felt lighter, like I had finally shed the last piece of her from my life. It was over. Really, truly over. She couldn't touch me anymore. As I drove home, The sun was setting on the horizon, casting a soft golden glow over everything. For the first time in months, I felt at peace. The storm had passed, and I was still standing. Stronger than before. When I got back to the house, I stepped inside, and the silence didn't bother me anymore. It didn't feel empty, it felt full of potential. I had my life back. Lisa was just a chapter one had finally closed. And for the first time in what felt like forever, I could breathe again.